Hey, how's it going everybody? My name is Gold, and today we're going to talk about the OP-04 pre-release. I just recently came back from a tournament, I went undefeated and got the winner Luffy, which is very cool by the way, and I'm very happy that I got it. I also picked up a little box here for the new set, which you can get for a bit cheaper and earlier before the set comes out if you go to the pre-release, so it's pretty worth it. And I will be doing an unboxing video, or maybe even live stream, let me know if you prefer one or the other, just a little bit after this video comes out. So the way this video is going to go, I'm going to talk a bit about the leader, I'm going to talk about the deck that I have, the bulk cards that I have, and then we are going to go into the simulator and talk about what cards you need in your deck, what cards are good, and what cards are mid. In general, we are just going to look at the set as a whole, so hopefully we'll try to get this video out as quickly as possible though, because the big worry I have is the pre-release is not going to be out for much longer. So let's go ahead and talk about the leaders. Now obviously here I chose Captain Kidd as my leader. I think he is the best one in the set. There are a lot of arguments out there that, Zoro's really good, Katakuri's pretty decent, Yamato's decent, but personally, I think Captain Kidd is going to be the best, simply because of 10 cost Doflamingo. Now, if you guys don't know what he does, he makes it so your leader does not refresh during the refresh phase, meaning you lose out on your attack. But with your Captain Kidd leader ability, you can forcibly restand him in order to attack, so you don't have to worry too much. You always can have an attacker with Captain Kidd, and that is something that happened to me in the semifinals. He had 0 life, all he had was his 10 cost in his hand. He used it to freeze my board and my leader, but I was able to restand and attack with 7 Dawn to go for game, because obviously you're not going to have enough counters for this format. It's just not going to happen. So anyways, Captain Kidd, by far, I think is the best leader. I think there are a lot of arguments you can make that Zoro is pretty good and Katakuri and Yamato are great, but whatever. Fuck that. Captain Kidd is better. Trust me. Now let's go over very quickly about the deck that I have. I'm going to go over it because, it's RNG, but I'll just show you guys very quickly. I don't really need to go into too much detail about it. For example, here we have my 2K counters. I had 6 2K counters. They do stuff, but who cares? You're just ditching it for 2K counters. That's basically what you're going to look for in your deck every single time. 2K counters goes in the deck. Next up, I have only 2 blockers. That really sucked. 2 blockers, there are not a lot of blockers in this format. However, I was lucky enough to get an SR blocker, which is Sabo. Sabo is very good because not only are your cards unkillable for a turn, which does come into play, I'll show you actually, I have a few events that do KO things, such as the new 5 cost Doflamingo one, but it also allows you to trash 2, draw 2. Or is it draw 2, trash 2? Yeah, draw 2, then trash 2. Which is really good because you can cycle out cards that don't have counters and get rid of them for something that might have a counter. Because that is way, way more valuable in this format. But yeah, don't expect a lot of people to get blockers. It's not going to happen. Then of course we have what everybody else should always get, are the vanillas. So vanilla cards have no effects, obviously, but they have really high attack stat lines, and we run as many of those big boys as we can. How many did I get? 3, 4, 5, 6. I had 6 of those. Pretty strong. These are basically your boss cards. I also got one other SR, if you guys can tell. I got Gear 4 Luffy, and I'll be honest with you, I never played him. I played him 0 times. 0. Which makes me a little sad because I had a lot of people in the tournament play like really strong cards against me. I got hit with the 10 cost Doflamingo, I got hit by the 9 cost Yamato, but I never got his effect. It's pretty good. You can attack active characters, but it's not as good as it would be in the regular format, right? Because you don't have Colosseum in play, meaning normally he's able to use Rush. But another thing, you'll never have like a ton of cards in your trash in this format either, so you probably wouldn't be able to really get full use out of him. But either way, he's a cool card, I just never got to use him. Obviously, if you get like an SR card, that should probably just go in your deck automatically. I only got 2, but the Sabo is honestly the best card in the deck for me. Next up, we have a bunch of random mid cards, and this is kind of scraping the bottom of the barrel. We have Caramel, which is just a cycle basically. Moscato, which doesn't really do anything, but it does have the trigger effect, which allows me to play it, so that's kind of nice. It has Banish. Treble, this card was actually insane. I saw him like once, and he's pretty good against all of the vanilla cards, because you have a lot of people who play things like this, right? And that means they have high attack, low cost, meaning Treble can just KO them. Treble is just an insane card all around, but it is a rare, so it's very unlikely that you'll see him. And then we have a bunch of random cards. Black Maria, page 1, Usopp. This card was actually very good. One of the nice things about Usopp is on KO, he destroys an opponent's character with original power of 5k. So like, for instance, a lot of people will have a 5k attacker and they'll attach a Don to it, which will make it a 6k, but because his original power is 5, you can still destroy it, even if it's buffed up by a Don. So Usopp is actually a god tier card in this format, in my opinion. We have a bunch of events here. I played all the good ones that I had. Dragon Twister is not great. It's only 4k counter, basically, but its trigger is absolutely busted. It allows you to return a cost of 6 or less. I had it happen once, and I was able to send like a big beefy vanilla back to their hand, so that is really good. But really, this is like the best event. If you get any of these, play these, because then that also allows you to just blow these things up, or allows you to rest something, and if these guys have already attacked, you could like rest a 4-drop or something and then KO something else. So it's like god tier. This card is insane. This card's whatever. It's Gum Gum Rain. It's good if they attack for 7k, because most people are smart and attack for 7k. So it helps get you out of that situation. And then this is a really funny card. I'm going to put that to the side. I had King Kong Gun, and then I had Traino Bastardo, which basically just lets you kill a 4-drop for free. It's pretty good. It has another effect where you need like 15 cards in your trash, which will never happen. But yeah, events, pretty good. I have 2 Rebeccas. This card was pretty good. The ideal plan of it was to obviously get the King Kong Gun, the Trainos, the Sabo, or the Gear 4 Luffy. And then I got this. This was a really cool pull, and I'll be honest with you, it's a terrible card in this format. It's terrible, but I used it because she's super cool looking. And she has 1k counter, and that is the only thing I used her for. And then we have Nami. Nami's kind of good, but it's kind of risky. You need to make sure you have a lot of vanillas, otherwise the effect is not going to work. And then Sanji, my favorite character in the show, but he's just a 1-drop. Chopper and Karoo. I mean, the dream obviously was like Vivi into a Chopper into a Karoo, and then you could have like Rush and like he has the rest Don, but yeah, that would never have really happened realistically. And then we just have some random crap. These guys have decent attack, I guess, and this is just a 1k counter that I used. The effect is okay, I guess, but I never used it. One very cool thing that I did use, though, that I wanted to talk about is what was nice about Rebecca. Even though she's kind of like, I might just whiff on something, you are able to use King Kong Gun to buff her up by 6k attack, which I did win a game by doing that. I had a Rebecca on my board ever since like turn 1, and I never attacked with her because, you know, 2k stat line kind of sucks. You don't really want to spend 3 Don on her. And so I eventually got a King Kong Gun. I think I top decked it. I buffed her up to like 8k, right? And then I was able to go for game with her. And it was just so funny because I think he had a lot of opportunities to like get rid of Rebecca, but he just never touched it because, you know, I probably wasn't going to utilize her all that well. But the King Kong Gun ended up being super funny with it. But obviously the dream is like use King Kong Gun with like Monkey D. Luffy and attack twice or something. But unfortunately, I just, you know, I never got him. But either way, that was my deck. It was pretty solid. I don't really have any complaints with it. I mean, in a perfect world, you would obviously have better cards, but you can't really be picky about this. You have to try to do the best you can in this format. There really is nothing more you can do. You have to go for the 2k counters, you have to go for the blockers, put in the SRs no matter what, and then you have to scrape that barrel. You got to find the best things that you can. So let's quickly go over what I got in my bulk. So all of these cards kind of suck. I did get 2 Don. That's pretty cool. Oh yeah, this is the promo Luffy. You get this for entering. It's just a regular one though. Stussy, Igaram, pretty terrible. A lot of the Alabasta cards are pretty bad. This is like, maybe you could use it, but I didn't really like it. Otama, Golden Week, Stussy. Hera's complete garbage. Hanger. This card's okay. I kind of rethink this card a little bit. I saw some people use them, and I was like, you know what, maybe I should have used them actually. A lot of cards that require Alabasta type, not good. Unplayable. Same thing with Baroque Works. A lot of them require you to use Baroque Works. This card's pretty bad because you gotta, you know, take a life, which already sucks. And also, I don't have many Wano cards. This card I might have played, actually. I kind of like the trigger, but it's still not that great. And yeah. So I don't really have that many cards that were worth. This was, like, really bad, right? Like, the bulk that was left over, Like, honestly, the only thing I would have really considered putting in there was, like, maybe another Sanji and, like, maybe the carpet just because of the trigger. But at the same time, it's like, I'd rather have the Sanji probably. I don't know. The bulk was really rough to work with, right? But that's kind of how the format works. So let's go into the simulator and let's talk a little bit more. All right, so here is the simulator. We have several things to go over, and these are going to be all the cards that you need in the deck, at least if you get them. There is no guarantee that you'll get them, but if you see these cards, you add them instantly. First, we have all of the 2K counters. These are all the 2K counters in the deck. If you see these cards, you add them immediately. Now, as you can see, I tried to organize them a little bit. Some of them are 3 ofs and some of them are 4 ofs. These 2 cards are insanely good, but they're also rares, so you're probably not going to see them. But the Capone card has a nasty trigger where you use it and a leader or character cannot attack this turn. And you can use that on Eustace Kid so he can't double attack, which is pretty amazing. And then he's a 2K counter and a blocker. So obviously, if you get these cards, add them. Their effects are all pretty garbage. I don't think there's ever really a reason to use any of their effects. Maybe if you have like insane Dressrosa cards and you want to attack an active character, but you should just go to life instead. And I don't know, maybe you could use Sasaki to like magical mallet your hand, but really, no, just use it as a 2K counter. So these cards are going to go into your deck no matter what. Next up, we have the blockers. Load these bad boys up, and there are some blockers in here that are pretty bad, namely the dugongs. I think these guys are pointless. It's pretty bad unless you have multiples, and that's just not going to happen. Now, as for the good ones, you have Diamante, because he's a blocker and an attacker, and then obviously the SRs such as Sanji and Sabo are god tier if you get them, but you're probably not. They're SRs. If you do, though, it's fantastic. I do think Sabo was basically the best card in my deck. I used him in almost every duel, and Draw 2 Trash 2 was actually pretty solid. And making my characters not be KO'd by effects such as King Kong Gun, or not King Kong Gun, but what are the other events that you can do? Weaklings can't choose the way you die, you avoid things like that, and you also avoid, what's the other Navy one that kills things? Because I know I used it as well. Traino? It's this one, Destructive Sword of Thunder. I think they call it like Traino, but yeah, whatever, it's the simulator, they call things differently, but you get the idea. This one's pretty good. This is my only other blocker, which was Miss Mary. She has a trigger effect that you can play her immediately, which is pretty amazing. And the only thing that you wouldn't really want to run in the blocker lineup is just Dugong. All of them are just must-haves. Put them in immediately. This one returns people back to the hand. This one gets rid of 3 drops. This one gets like 1k power. It's all pretty solid. So yeah, blockers and 2k counters get the priority when you're building the deck. Add as many as possible. But as you can see, a lot of these blockers, you're probably not going to see a whole lot. Like a lot of them are high rarity. Diamante rare, SR, SR, and then uncommon for Mr. 4, rare for Bart as well. A lot of the common ones, you know, good luck. It's going to be tough. This is going to be a very low blocker set in my opinion. Next up, we have the OP-04 good cards and then the mid cards. Now there's a lot in here. Overall, these are the cards that you really want. Obviously, the SR cards, super good. You can't go wrong with them. You want these, right? 10 cost Doflamingo, insane. The Pell is absolutely insane. You can KO an opponent's character with 4,000 or less power. Absolutely busted if they do have any low blockers. Low attack blockers can get KO'd pretty easily. Sabo, obviously, he's the GOAT. Obviously, Gear 4 Luffy would be pretty insane. I had one, but I never got to use him. 9 cost Yamato would be also very busted in this format. And then you also have some really good events. I didn't get Red Rock. Red Rock also would have been insane. But let's quickly go over it. So Usopp is one of the big ones to talk about. He kills original power of 5k. I've talked a little bit about that, but it's really important. Once again, if you do have a character that's buffed up, he can kill the ones that are 5k originally. Also, you have Sugar as an SR, also a very good card because you can just rest a cost of 4 or less for 2 Dawn, which obviously is very good. And so, yeah, you have the Zoro card. I didn't see him, but he's really good. You get to minus a character by 2,000. You have your Vanillas, Treble, which is good. 10 cost Kaido, obviously. King, very high attack. Draw a card. Jack, if he dies, draw a card. Black Maria, draw a card, but also trigger, get the player for free. Page 1 I have here because he has the exact same stat line as what a regular 4-cost vanilla would be. So yeah, pretty good. 5k vanilla, 5k vanilla. Miss All Sunday, another SR that's pretty good. Gives you a little bit of ramp, can draw you a card. Also, you get to play it for free if it is a trigger. Mr. 5, not too bad. Big attack, allows you to KO an opponent's character with a cost of 4 or less. You probably won't use that effect too often because you have to rest your own character and you'd rather attack with it. But it does give you the opportunity to play him, and obviously you have Summoning Sickness, so you can use it on that turn, and then they have to attack into the 8k, which they probably don't want to do, unless they have another big beefy vanilla on board. But either way, you get the KO a 4-cost, and it's easier to counter out of the attacks of the 8k. Kairos is pretty good. You could rest your leader if he were to die. I doubt you would have any other synergy, but yeah, I mean, other than that, it's a 5k attacker still. Sabo, he's the GOAT, Vanilla, Gear 4 Luffy, Caramel, just a cycle card, but there is a chance that you could use the trigger to also draw a card and then also KO something, so that's pretty good. Big Beefy Vanilla, Yamato, super good. Moscato, get to play for free, or rather, you get to play off tempo, no Dawn, but you do trash a card. And it does have Banish, which is really good in this format. And then you have your events. So you have your Gum Gum Rain, pretty solid when people are attacking you for 7. You have your Better Paradise Waterfall. You have your Get Rid of 6-cost Vanillas. You have Get Rid of Anything card. You have your I Hope You're in My Life as a trigger card. You have Color Trap. This one is a 1-cost, gives you 1k power, but then you also get to rest a cost of 4 or lower, which can be pretty decent. And then, of course, King Kong Gun, very good if you have Dressrosa cards. And then you have your Kill a cost of 4 or less card. And then you have this card. While it is 3 Dawn, I think it's pretty good. 6k counter, which is always pretty solid when you have to protect yourself against a lot of strong vanillas like that. But then also, if you and your opponent have a total of 4 or less life, you get to KO something that is a 2-cost or lower, which is also pretty good. And the trigger is draw 1 card. So if you don't need the counter, you can just cycle it out for something else. Now, next up are going to be the mid cards. This is like, well, I got nothing else. So we're going to try to go over all of these cards as well. These aren't going to be super good, but if you have them, you're probably going to add them. So you have Chaka, 0 effect, just a beat stick. You have Chopper, pretty awful 1k counter. Nami, maybe it could be good, you're kind of gambling. Luffy, pretty big boss monster if you have nothing else, and it has Banish, so that's kind of nice, but it's also kind of overkill, and he's kind of like your whole turn. You don't really want to spend 8 Dawn on a card like this. And Vivi, exactly the same. I mean, I love the art, I think she's really great, but the chances you get her effect is just never going to happen. She's basically just a really fancy looking 1k counter. This is also pretty bad. The effect is okay, maybe. Senior Pink, the effect will never work, 5k beat stick. Dellinger, pretty good effect actually, gives you an active Dawn. This could be pretty nice if you have any events. Lao G has a decent stat line at 5k, but still overpriced. The effect is okay, but also overpriced. Rosinante, not that great. He's basically like a worse Luffy. You're probably not going to get any use out of that effect. Like, you're never going to get a 5-cost green out. It's probably never going to happen. I mean, maybe what in a perfect world, what do you get? You get like, maybe you have a Diamante Rosinante, but it'll probably never happen. Ice Oni is pretty neat. I do think it's only good if you have the event form though, which would be Plague Shot. But yeah, it could maybe be okay if you have nothing better. Who's Who, maybe if you have a ton of Animal Kingdom pirates, you can make them work. 8-cost Crocodile is kind of tragic. If you don't have a Crocodile as your leader, he's basically just an overpriced cycle. So yeah, he's not great. If you have him, I would consider running the blue Crocodile leader. Still probably not worth it. I'd rather double attack with Kid either way. And again, we have another Searcher card. Not that great unless you have a lot of Baroque Works cards. Mr. 2 is actually pretty good. I thought he was pretty solid. So you use 1 Dawn. If someone attacks you, you copy whatever their power is, which means that you only ever need to 1k counter out of anything that attacks this card. That's not bad, honestly. So I do think this card's a little bit better than others, but you're still losing out on Dawn when you do it, which is risky. If you lose out on too much Dawn early on, it could be pretty bad for you. Then you have Mr. 3, he gives like minus 1k to something, but his stat line sucks. His stat line is okay, at least he has 5k attack, his effect is pretty bad. Cavendish is pretty okay, it's not terrible. Its stat line is pretty good, it doesn't have a counter, which sucks, but it does allow you to attack active characters, which means the control game could be pretty good for you. If you get him, that's pretty solid. Giant Man, you know, it's 7k beat stick. Luffy, pretty amazing, but I put him here because I never drew him and I'm still salty about it. Rebecca is a pretty solid card if you have a lot of Dressrosa cards, such as the Gear 4 Luffy, and maybe you can try to find the Gear 4 Luffy, but then ultimately not get the Gear 4 Luffy, but you can get other cards with her, including the events, which is pretty solid. Big Mom, overpriced, but maybe the trigger could happen. I don't know, maybe you could get lucky. I don't think she's good though. And then you have Kinemon. You could try to go for game with him and attack twice, but honestly, his stat line is pretty bad for his 6 cost. Then you have this guy who has 1k more attack if you attach a Don to him and you have less life. I mean, that could be okay. And then you have Rabian. Again, it's okay, it's whatever. Happiness Punch, 2k counter for 1 cost if you really need it. The Green Event Searcher, pretty good if you have a lot of the green cards. Plague Shot, only good if you have Oni. If you don't have Oni and you don't have Plague Shot, both of them are kind of worthless. Nose Fancy Cannon is okay, I guess, if you like want the 6k counter, but the trigger kind of sucks. Barrier is basically just a little bit better than Happiness Punch, but it's still just not that good. At least it has a decent trigger, I guess. And then you have Heavenly Fire, which is, I guess, a good way to get rid of a 3 cost if you really want to, but then you also add it to the life, so that kind of sucks. The trigger's pretty decent though. It basically allows you to put any card that you have from your hand onto your life, so you could put like a really good trigger there, so that's pretty good. I do like that, but again, it's probably only going to be good in that situation. I don't think using it on mini 3 costs is going to be a big deal unless they have things like, you know, Chaka or Senior Pink that just have that 5k stat line that you want to get rid of. But anyways, these are going to be all of the cards that you really, really want in this format. There are some that I have not talked about, and trust me, they are not worth talking about. But anyways, let's talk a little bit about my overall game plan and strategy. So we'll go ahead and swap to the webcam here for this. Alright, so one of the bigger strategies, of course, that you're looking for when you're playing in this is to attack the life. You don't really want to go for board or for control. That's not going to win you these matches. It's way better to try to get the enemy down to 1 life as quickly as possible, so then you could double swing for 12k. That's the win condition with Kid. If you make the game go on for too long, there is a very high chance that the opponent will have like that 10 cost Doflamingo, that 10 cost Kaido, that 9 cost Yamato. Those really high cost cards are out there. The opponents probably will have them, and the only way to play around that will be to go for life as aggressively as possible, which means you want to attack their life for 7k as often as possible, including double swinging. Now obviously you want to try to develop the board as much as possible, putting things out there that have a decent way to attack every turn. Obviously the vanillas are great in the mid game, but early game you really just want to try to put out even the crappy cards like Moscato. You know, it doesn't seem like much, but just having a 5k attack for 1 Dawn investment, it's worth it. You get a card out of their hand. And trust me, there's not a lot of counters in this format. A lot of people have things that don't have any counters. Treble might be a bad example though, because he's a really good card, but he doesn't have a counter. And so when you have cards without counters, you're going to fall behind in the life game. And trust me, I won every game by just attacking life. I really never tried to trade the board unless I saw something that was really a threat. But generally that was also because the way my deck was built. I did have some outs to things that other people didn't. These cards here allowed me to deal with whatever big vanilla that they put on the board, and this one was also pretty good at clearing like blockers. But I would always just use these on the big vanillas. If I mulliganed, I always tried to get one of these, a big vanilla, or I would try to keep something like Sabo. That's also just depending on what you have in your deck. When you're trying to mulligan, look for 2 different things. You look for either a hand that has a really good curve, or you look for a hand that has your best cards. In other words, you have your Sabo right? Or this card, in my case, is super good. Or maybe you have like a really good vanilla that you can play. That's kind of what you're trying to do, because in this format, you have to be a little bit aggressive with whatever your strongest cards are, because they have way more value. Attack for 7k as often as possible with your leader. Try to end the game as quickly as possible, because you will lose to high cost cards that other people have, especially if you're unlucky. And do not be greedy with your counter cards. So you want to try to aggressively defend your life, especially if you're playing against people who are also playing stuff like Kid. It could be a pretty bad sign, because they have things that can double attack and end you in a moment's notice, especially if they have hard removal cards themselves, and they probably will. So you have cards like this that are actually common, which means they will most likely rest a blocker and then KO one of your vanilla attackers. So you can't really afford to just be like, oh, I'm gonna take this 5k swing to life because I have a blocker on my board, I feel fine. The game has evolved to a point where blockers are pretty easy to kill. They're going to blow up, they're going to get attacked by Cavendish, they're going to get attacked by Gear 4 Luffy if you draw him. They're not going to stay on the board. You cannot feel safe behind a blocker. Counter out of any attack that you can, and then just use your blocker in the late game when they're trying to attack something for like 7k. So like, say for example, they're trying to attack a 5k attacker that you have, like Chaka or something, and they're trying to attack it with a 7k. Instead of letting that guy die, use the blocker to save your board. I think that's the best way to use the blocker. And of course, if they're just going to kill you, use the blocker. You can't hold on to blockers in this kind of format. It just won't save you at all. One other piece of advice I could say, when you have your big vanilla cards, which I'm sure you guys will get plenty of big vanilla cards, they're very common. You don't want to use these as counters unless you have to. You'd much rather play these cards than get rid of these cards to save your life. It's just so good to put these on the board and then start swinging for 7k each turn. And because of the lack of 2k counters, it's gonna hit them. I only had 6 2k counters, so attacking for 7k has way more value in this format. So yeah, make sure to go for life with these. Don't ever try to trade the board unless you have to. Also, when going first or second, I think going second is generally better with Kid, just because that extra card comes in a little bit clutch, because you do need a little bit more cards in hand in order to fuel his power, and you are going to use his power often. As soon as you have like 5 Dawn, that's when you load him up with 2, 7k, restand, 7k for a card. So it's going to give you a big tempo swing at that point in the game, because they are most likely going to take those 2 hits, and then from there, you're going to be able to just keep trying to apply pressure and set lethal up. As soon as that lethal moment comes, man, you have to all in. Don't worry about how many cards they have. Even if they have like 5 cards in their hand, load them up with 12k and attack twice. So anyways, guys, attack the leader as much as possible. Don't try to trade too much. Try to go second as much as possible, and try to build the deck. Like I said, you want to try to get as many 2k counters as possible, as many of these big attack vanillas as possible, as many blockers as possible, and then just have a good time. It is a bit of a lucky kind of format, so I hope you guys do well. I hope you guys have a lot of fun, and I will see you guys with a unboxing video soon, and then we will also get right back to making some deck profiles for the OP-04 format. Anyways, guys, as always, like and subscribe and all that. Let me know what you guys want to see in the comments, and I will see you guys next time. Peace.